Okay, so we're back with hour 2. We're going to start getting into file uploads. Okay, lots of applications. Most of the applications that we build wind up having some kind of upload component. Why would we ever need to allow users to upload files? What web applications have you used that allow you to upload files?
Facebook.
Orbis, what do you upload on Orbis? Okay.
Facebook.
Yeah. What kinds of things are you uploading on, and what are you typically uploading on social media sites?
Yeah, images or files, but they all get treated the same in a database. No spoilers.
Okay. Shane?
LinkedIn,
Okay, what might you upload on LinkedIn?
resume, or a photo of yourself.
Okay, yep. What other application did all of you log into last night and upload files to by midnight before you went to bed? Right? Same, Blackboard allows you to upload files. So, you know, and the file type that we're going to upload is going to depend what that application is. Obviously, if we're building a photo gallery, we don't want people uploading text documents or PDFs. We want to make sure that they're uploading images and only images. If we went somewhere like here, we can log in. We haven't seen Herb for a while. Let's log in. If I want to go and add a photo, I can pick an image. It allows me to upload. If I want to add something else in the Facebook photo gallery, here I've got a text file. And it's actually checking, right? Saying, no, you can't upload a text file here. This is, you clicked photo upload. So it has to be a JPEG, PNG, GIF, or TIFF file in order to be able to do it. Okay? So often we'll want to be doing type checking as well. Notice it's also checking, what else is it checking here besides the type? Right, it's checking size. So it's common that we're going to put a cap on how big file uploads can be. Sometimes we might even want a minimum. Can you think of an example? Why might we want a minimum file size? Why would we ever restrict how small a file could be?
Because it saves space in the server, the database server.
Okay, could be.
It might be not a real file, just like renamed to the extension.
Yep, so that's an option.
That to disable bandwidth?
Could be, although the smaller the file, we're saving bandwidth anyway. I'm saying, why would we want to put a minimum? Say this file's actually too small to upload. There are times we would want to do that. If we were working with images, how could an image be too small? And we would want to reject it.
If this is for a CMS and you have to maintain a specific quality, if it's too small, like under maybe a megabyte, then it might not be a quality image that you would want to have in your CMS.
Exactly. If we're going to do some processing or use that image for something, it may be that we need the image to be a certain minimum size, or it's just going to be too small and not going to work. One of my customers, I built an e-commerce site for, they sold photo gifts. So customers uploaded pictures and they would print them on blankets, towels, pillows. They had a minimum file size. If that image was too small, they couldn't take it and render it onto a product. So not only did we have a maximum, which I think was 5 megabytes, but we had a minimum, I think 200 kilobytes. Any photo smaller than 200 kilobytes is going to be too small for them to actually produce. So we can check both the minimum and the maximum. We could also check the file type as well. Okay. So what we want to do, I'm just going to kind of run through this really quickly. You can go through these notes on your own time. So let's talk about how these file uploads work. Obviously, we know we want to be able to check the file type. We want to be able to check the size if we need to. So the idea here is we want our client, our end user, to be able to take files that reside on their local machine, and we want to let them upload it to the server. Now, we're not using FTP for this. We're not giving our clients access to the server with FTP. We're using HTTP. So it works a little bit differently than using FTP. Okay, so things like document libraries, we talked about Blackboard. Spreadsheets are also really popular for uploading. What's the value of uploading? Why would we ever need to be able to allow someone to upload a spreadsheet or a CSV file to our site?
Maybe you have some really weird web accounting app, and you take in an Excel sheet, and then you turn that into a ledger or something.
Could be. In many cases, we could use Excel or CSV files for doing batch uploads. So someone has a whole bunch of data, say in an Excel file or in a text document, rather than having them manually enter all those records in our web application, we might want to allow them to upload the spreadsheet, and then in script we would parse out each record. Really common use of this. If you build an e-commerce site, chances are your client already has a list of all their products in a text file, a CSV, or an Excel file, so that they don't have to enter them all into our website. Let's let them upload the products, and we'll save all of those products automatically to the database to save data entry. So here's how it works. There's basically two parts to this. The first part is we need a form. Now, the form is going to be pretty much the same as our run-of-the-mill HTML forms, except there's going to be two new things on it. The first thing that's going to be new is inside our form tag, normally we have a method, which usually is post, and we have an action, which is the page that will process our form. We need a third attribute, which is the encoding type. If we don't add this attribute with the value of multi-part form data, our file doesn't get transferred. So what this multi-part form data basically does is, let's say I have a file on my machine. I've got one right here. So in my pictures, I have an image called aaa.jpg, just the PHP logo. What this multi-part form data encoding does is it converts a copy of that JPEG to binary, so basically to ones and zeros. And the way it works is those ones and zeros are transferred from my client machine to the server, and then they're decoded from binary back into that original file format. If we don't include this attribute in our form, that binary conversion never happens, and the files never get copied to the server. There's no error, just it's like that upload never existed. The other thing we need is an input control with type equals file. When we put input type equals file in a form, what does that look like to the user? What is the user going to see on the page? From input type equals file. Can you grab the door, please? Anybody have an idea what it will look like when we put this HTML in our form? George? Yeah, there's a little button that says browse, and when you hit it, it opens a file dialog box in your operating system, right? It's platform independent, will work on any operating system. The input type equals file. Remember we said from the beginning of the semester, HTML is dumb, purely for presentation. It has little or no functionality. The input type equals file is one of the few smart components in HTML. It actually does something. We click it, it gives us a file dialog box so our user can browse their local operating system. Okay. So we're going to need one of these. We can place as many of these on a page as we want. So if we want to let our user upload 3 files, we're going to need 3 file type inputs on our page. In fact, I just did this for a friend of mine who's an artist, and what he wants to do, I built his site so he could upload his paintings. And on his upload page, there are 3 inputs. The first one is for uploading the main image, which is a certain size. The second one is for uploading a thumbnail image, which is smaller. And the third one is for uploading a full-size image because he also has a slideshow. So there's 3 different input type equals files on his form. And his form has this attribute, encoding type multi-part form data. So here's what happens when we use PHP. The file, when we post it to the server, it basically goes into the server cache. Now it can't stay there. I think it only stays there for 20 minutes. And if we don't move it out of cache, that file gets deleted. So it automatically goes into cache. While it's sitting in there, we can check do any validation we need. So what's the name of the file? How big is it? What type is it? So if there's any errors, we can tell the user, hey, your file's too big or your file's the wrong type. So we've got attributes to things like the file name, the file type, and the size, as well as where in cache it is. So every file upload goes to a different spot in cache. So we can check these things. The other thing we'll want to do is we'll want to give the file a unique name before we save it permanently. Why would we want to make sure every file that gets uploaded by users has a unique name? Wolfgar? Okay, yeah. So let's say 2 users upload a file called profile.jpg on a PHP application. So Spencer uploads profile.jpg at 4:01. Nick uploads profile.jpg at 4:02. What do you suppose the default behavior of PHP is? Will it name Nick's file to profile1, or will it overwrite Spencer's file? Yeah, the default behavior on Apache is to overwrite the file, any file with that name. It doesn't automatically assign a different name. So programmatically, we're going to want to make sure we're creating a unique name for that file. So that way multiple users could upload a file with the same original name, and we'll save them and we won't have files getting overwritten. The last thing we need to do is we need to move it out of the temp directory where it will only live for until it times out, and we'll want to put it in a separate folder where all the upload files are. Okay. So this is the process we're going to go through. Okay. So first we'll build just a basic upload page where we can upload any kind of file. We'll parse it with PHP, and then if it's an image, we can display that image on the page. That'll be step 1. Step 2 will be to integrate all this functionality into our video games application so we can upload the game covers along with our records. When we're adding or editing a game, we can browse and include the game cover image along with it. And then if we have time, we'll build out a little image gallery where we can display all these things. So I'm going to make a new file. Make a new PHP file, which I will call upload.php. This is just kind of a testing page as a sample. We're not integrating this, so I'm not going to bother including my header and footer. So I'll just set the page title here as upload. We want a really simple form on here. So we'll set our method to post. We'll set our action to save upload.php, which is the page we'll build in a minute. And we're going to add the encoding type, ENC type equals, and we need to choose multi-part form data, which has a funky syntax, multi-part as one word / form - data. So this is what will convert any file uploads to binary. So that binary can be submitted, transferred to the server with HTTP. So now we want an input, and we have to specify the type is file. We'll just call it any file. And then we'll put a submit button on. Really simple form. We won't worry about bootstrap, headers, footers, CSS, anything else. So this is strictly an HTML page. So the only 2 things that are new are this attribute and this attribute. So save your page, load it up in your browser, and all you should see basically is a browse button and then an upload button beside it. Oops, I didn't save it in the right place. So there's our page. If you see it in different browsers, it looks slightly different. The implementation in each browser. So in Chrome, it says no file chosen. In Firefox, it says no file selected. In Internet Explorer, it's going to look a little different here as well. It looks like a text box and a button. So it looks a little different, but it works the same way. So if I browse and pick a file on my computer, any file, and click upload, we'll get our 404 page, which is okay because it's looking for save upload. That page doesn't exist yet. The other thing I want to do in my file system is I want to create a subfolder in my lesson 10 to hold any files that the users upload. I don't just want them going in the root with all my web pages. Typically, if we're letting users upload files, we save those to a different folder so we can manage those. So in my lesson 10 folder, I'm going to create a new directory called uploads. So when we save any new files, we'll save them into that folder.
Would you ever use like a folder name like temp to hold the photos temporarily?
Well, they're held temporarily in the server cache anyway.
Yeah.
So you can, but this is the final resting place. They go to temp automatically. I'm going to inspect the file, and if I'm happy with it, I'm going to copy it in here out of cache. So now we need to make our save upload page. So I'm going to make a new PHP file and call it save upload. I'll just put on a title, and inside my body, we'll put on PHP tags. But we want to get some of the properties of that file. So I'm going to create a variable called name. So which of the built-in PHP collections is going to have information about that file upload? Our form's using post, but it's a file upload. So here's our list. Which one of these collections do we want to use? Yeah, we want the files collection rather than the post collection. And we called it any file. So this is a multi-dimensional properties. So we want to get the file name for the file we called any file. And then let's just print out file name. So whatever our file is called, when we browse to it and click upload, our next page should display the name of that file. So this element refers to which file upload box, and this element refers to the name property for this particular array. Okay, so it's a multi-dimensional array. So I've got aaa.jpg. When I click upload, so it shows me the name of the file. If I browse to a different type of document, which I can do, so if I browse to a text file and upload, so it should show us whatever that original file name is. Everybody with me so far? Any questions?
What else does the name? The square brackets. What else do we have?
We're going to find out. Good question. That's exactly what we're going to do next. We have access to the size. So we have the size attribute. Let's print that out as well. So save this, upload a file again, and you should see the file size. What do you notice about the file size that shows up when you refresh this page? Did you get the value you expected to get? So if I resubmit, so 865 here, what units is the file size shown in? Yeah, it's in bytes, not kilobytes, right? So there's 1024 bytes in a kilobyte. So if I go back, so this image, that's 164 kilobytes. It shows me the value in bytes. So when we're doing the size checking, you need to be aware that value, that size property is in bytes and not kilobytes. Okay. So if we limited this and said the maximum size is 16, then that's going to get blocked. Okay, so that value is always going to be in bytes. We also have access to the type. So there's an attribute called type. Let's try that as well. Now this attribute will work for now. In a production environment, it's not really ideal, and I'll show you why in a minute. Now this comes back, Nick, to the point you made earlier about the file type. Okay. On DreamHost, this is all we can do. We'll try the type. If I refresh. So notice my JPEG, here's what PHP determines the type. It's called image/JPEG. So if we're building something and users can only upload JPEGs, that's the file type we're going to need to validate for. If I pick a, let's say I pick, let's pick something else. Let's say I pick a PDF. Oh, it doesn't like something in there. We'll pick a PHP file. Right. So there's our type. Now, here's the problem with using that attribute. I'm going to take my JPEG here, aaa.jpg. I'll copy it and paste it. And I'm going to rename this to not really text. So I've changed the file extension. It's still an image file, but I've made it a text document. So the actual MIME type is still a JPEG, but I've changed the extension. When I browse to it, and it looks like a text file here. So even though that's actually a JPEG, we fooled it. So that type attribute, it really just checks the file extension. It's not checking the actual content type, which is dangerous. Right? Now, there is a function we can use in PHP called MIME content type, where you can pass in the name of the file. This function isn't supported on DreamHost. So on DreamHost, all we can really do is check the extension. Unless we could get them to plug that in. Okay, on another hosting environment, the MIME content type will work. It may work on my local server, I don't know. I'll try it. We'll see if that works. But I'm pretty confident that MIME content type doesn't work on DreamHost. Whoops, this should just be. Yeah. So it works on my local WAMP server. Notice the difference. This is how we access the temporary location of where it is in cache. We're going to need this value. When I call the MIME content type function, it knows that this is actually a JPEG. When I just check the type, it says, it just looks at the extension, says, that's a text file. Whereas the MIME content type function can tell this is really a JPEG despite the extension. If you try that MIME content type function on DreamHost, I don't think it's going to work. You can try it if anybody wants to try it. You can let me know if it worked for you or if you get an error. When I've tried it in the past, the server threw an error. So this is the better way, but it doesn't work on DreamHost. So the other thing is the temporary location, which is where it is in cache. So we use the TMP underscore name attribute. So we'll print that out as well. So this will show us where on the server that file is right now. And we'll need to know this because eventually we want to copy the file out of there into our uploads folder. So exactly the same as what we did above, except now I'm accessing the TMP name underscore name property. So if I resend it, whoops, I should put in a breakpoint. I'll just go back to my code for a minute. I forgot a breakpoint here. Guess I should say. I'll put in the type, I'll put in the MIME content type. Now, look what happens when I keep uploading the same file. So the first time it goes here, PHP7C09. Even if I upload the same exact file, that temp name changes every single upload, even if it's the same session, same browser, same file. Okay, so that's just generated by the web server. So now what we need to do is we need to copy it out of here and save it in our new uploads folder. So this folder is still empty, right? So now we want to copy to the uploads folder permanently. So PHP actually has a function with a good descriptive name for a change for doing this. Anybody know what function will let us copy that file from temp to the uploads folder? Starts with an M. Okay, move, and again, here's where our code editor is helpful. There's the name of our function. Move underscore uploaded underscore file. With 2 parameters. What do you suppose the parameters are? Yeah, where's the file currently? So which variable tells us where it is currently? Yeah, so from our temp name variable, and where do we want it to go? To uploads. And now we can just put in our name. Keep the original name of the file, move it out of the temp directory into the uploads directory. So if we refresh this page again, we should then be able to go in our file system into the uploads folder, and we should see a copy of that file. Let's try it. So I will refresh and resend. And now my file is copied into uploads. If you're working on DreamHost, you'll have to open your uploads folder on the server, and you have to right click and choose hit refresh. You won't see the file being uploaded automatically. You have to refresh your uploads folder. So I'm going to go back and pick another file. I'll go into one of these samples, pick my Penguins file, and upload it. When I go back, because I'm on Windows, it just updates automatically. Here's my file. So now I could upload anything, and it's going to show up here. Now, we talked about giving the file a unique name. That's going to be important. Because if I upload this again, so I uploaded my text document at timestamp 437. If I go back to my browser and upload that file again, so here was my not really a text document. If I upload it now, notice I'm now timestamped at 438, so I've overwritten the file. So by default, my file is always going to get overwritten if there's already a version with that name. So what we want to do is make sure these names are unique. Okay. Any questions so far about what's up here? So there are many different ways of making sure we have a unique name. How could we do it? Anybody have an idea of what we could possibly do? There's no right or wrong, but we have some options to make sure that if all our users, everyone on the site uploads a file with the same name, we want to make sure every one of those is named uniquely. Matt?
Like you make use of a database, you can just add a number every time in increments.
Okay, so that would be an idea. Yep, store the name of the upload with an ID and attach that ID.
You could salt the name, which is like.
Yeah, we could generate a salt, so a random value. That's an option that would work. Any other ideas? Well, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the way I like to do it. I like to use the session to generate a unique name. So I'm going to call session start. It certainly isn't the only way to do it. I'm going to create a variable called final name. So what I'm going to do, every session automatically has a unique ID that's generated on the server. So that means if 10 people are accessing our site at the same time, they all have a unique session ID. So we can use that session ID for our files. So if I call the session ID function, that will return that user's unique session ID. I'm going to use this as a prefix at the beginning of my file name. And then I'm going to append on, I like to append on an underscore character. Or actually, maybe I'll use a dash. Then we'll put the original name on the end of it. So this way, if we all upload a file called profile.jpg, each one of our profile.jpgs will still keep that name, but we're going to have our unique session ID appended on as a prefix. So now all of those files will be unique. So this generates a unique name.
But if the user simply upload the same file.
Well, if the same user uploads the same file in the same session, I'm assuming they probably want to overwrite their file. Right? Now, if you want to make sure they don't, then you could use some other random thing like a random number, or also use the current date and timestamp as well. I found this works pretty well. So now what do I have to replace so that rather than uploading the file with the original name, we're uploading it with the unique name? So we want to change this from our original name to our final name. So now make sure the name includes the unique session ID. So let's look at how this works. So now I'm going to refresh. I'm going to re-upload my text file again. And now at 4:43, here's my session ID, and then append it on with the rest of the name. So if I upload this again in the same browser, it's going to get overwritten. But if I open a different browser or even a private tab, let's try that. I'll grab my upload URL. I'll upload another private window. If I upload the exact same file, it won't overwrite. So I'm going to browse to my same file and upload. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't quite expect that. Let me try it in Chrome. So I'll upload, I guess I want to upload the same file. So I should have a different session ID. I'm in a different browser. And now I do. So here's the version I uploaded in Firefox. Here's the version I uploaded in Chrome with 2 different session IDs. So this is certainly not the only way to make sure our file is unique, but this is one way we can do it. The other thing we can do is we can say, hey, if this is an image, let's display the photo on the page so the user can see it. So after we've copied the file, so show if it's an image. We'll say if our type variable is equal to image/JPEG, let's generate an IMG tag. Our source is uploads. Now we're in literal single quotes here, so we need to append on outside our final name. So it would look something like this. So we have double quotes in the middle of, whoops. So show the image, but make the source of the image dynamic. So whatever the new file name we just uploaded, let's display that in an image tag. So this whole thing winds up being the source attribute of our image. So I'll try and upload another image. So if I pick a JPEG, it's going to show up. If I pick something that is not a JPEG, like this text file, nothing's displayed. So it may be a JPEG, it may not be. Does anybody have any questions about what's going on this page and what we're doing? So this is sort of all the real functionality we need with uploads. We need our form with our encoding type. We need an input type equals file. And we will need to use our files collection to grab information about that file upload. What was the name? What was the size? What was the type? Where is it living in cache? And where do we want to copy it to? And can we give it a unique name when we save it into our permanent directory? The other benefit of using the session ID is if our user's uploading a whole bunch of files all at once, we're going to see they all have the same session ID. So if there's ever a problem with those files, they're going to be grouped together with that ID. So we know we'll get an idea of who uploaded them and when. So what I want to do, we'll take a break in a minute. I want to set up our video games page so that we're going to be able to add the adding and displaying of the video game covers. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to modify our database and add a column into the table for storing the images. Now there's two ways we can do it. We can store the JPEGs directly in the database, which I don't recommend, or we could simply create a string column to store the name of the file. That's much more efficient. If we actually store the files in the database, our databases get massive, which increases our storage and hosting costs dramatically.
I actually had to deal with this problem in co-op before. Wouldn't you store it in a binary large object, the image?
Yes, well, that's how you would store it if you wanted to embed it directly in the database. We'd use a blob. There's really no need to store the files in the database. We're going to store the files on the server this way, and then in the database, all we need to store is this. We just need to know the unique name and attach it to the record, rather than having a copy on the file system and a copy of that file in the database. I find it's very inefficient and very expensive to embed the files in the database. So generally, I prefer not to do it. It's not wrong, but I'm not going to do it that way. So we need to connect to our database quickly. I'm going to open up Workbench. To get connected to your database, either local or online, whichever you're using. I'm just going to connect. I will run my use command. If I look at my games table, It looks like this, right? ID, name, age. We haven't really modified this. So what we want to do is add a photo column on the end, or a game cover column. So I've actually given you the script on Blackboard. So inside of lesson 10, rather than type it, it's down at the bottom here. It says lesson 10 SQL script. Just copy that. Paste it in. I've called it cover_image. And I've made it 255 characters, which is probably much bigger than it needs to be. So I'm going to run this alter table command, which Workbench says was okay. And now when I run my select query, we should have an extra column for cover image and all the values are null. So when we upload images, not only are we going to want to save those files to a directory in our lesson 10, but we also want to grab the file name and add it into our database. So then when a user is looking at that record, we can display the cover of that game. So we're going to do some basic create, read, update, and delete, and integrate that in with the file upload code we just did. We'll do both things. Upload the file and then save the name to the database as well when we're doing our insert or update. So I'll leave Workbench open just so we can make sure that's all working. I don't really need to do anything else in here. I'm just going to minimize this for now. Okay. So I think this is a good place for us to take a pause. I will leave this code up for anybody who needs to see it. I'm going to stop our recording and we'll come back in 10 minutes.